You're listening to Unfiltered Brew, hosted by Master Cicerone Joe Vogelbacher and brewery founder Eric Flanigan, out of the Sugar Creek Brewing Company in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Cheers, Eric.
Shit, Prost.
Yeah,
Guten Tag.
Thanks for the thanks for the correction. Yeah, this is a Moss.
Welcome to Unfiltered Brew,
Oh yeah,
hosted by Eric Flanigan.
right.
What are we drinking, Jeff?
Today this is a Marzen. You know,
I need two hands.
we're traditionally not making German styles, but we do make lagers year round. And once a year now, it's become a tradition. We'll make this Marzen style lager. Really nice, golden, bready, malty lager, kind of in celebration of Oktoberfest.
You know, can I admit something? We've been so busy all the time with stuff, whether it be expansion, getting new equipment, or designing new labels. And the last two beers I have not had until everybody else had. So this is my first time having it. We've already had our Oktoberfest.
Yeah,
This is great. I mean, man.
very bready and malty, kind of has that nice special German malt flavor. But
You can drink a lot of these. So talk to me, man. What's the ABV on this?
you know, these range usually from like 5.3 to 6.3, somewhere in that range. It's a little bit stronger on the lager style. The ours in particular is on the low end of that range, so it's figure 5.8.
The color's great.
Yeah.
It's good.
So the cool thing about this dimpled glass, this is called a Moss, which means it holds 1 liter in German. So if you go over to Europe, you'll see a lot of times that these glasses are marked, and it'll have a 1L next to it for 1 liter. So that way the customer knows exactly how much they're getting. This glass, it's right at the top of the dimples is the 1 liter mark, and the spot above that is supposed to be where the foam is. So you have a good, 2-3 fingers of foam on here, and then the rest being your Marzen beer. Now, fun thing that we just did, actually, we did this at the Rowathon at Michelle's Mighty Mission. One of the cool German games they play is the Maskrugstemen. I'm probably butchered that, the name of that, but that's the stein holding competition. So one of these weighs a little more than 5 pounds. You put your arm out like this, hold your elbow straight if you can, and if you spill the beer or you break the 90-degree angle or break your elbow, you're out. So it's a test of grit.
Here's the problem, though. How do I drink it from way out there?
Well, when you get tired, you just bow out and take a sip.
Well, so let me ask you this. What's your favorite Marzen? Because I got to tell you, actually, tell us in the comments what your favorite are, because I've not had enough of them, I'm realizing.
Yeah, well, I think it's more of an American thing these days. You go to Germany, and if you go to Oktoberfest, they don't drink this style. They drink a style that's unique to the Oktoberfest. It's called Fest beer, and it's a golden color. It's still a strong lager, but it's not as bready as this one and malt forward, and kind of this one has a touch of even some caramel notes. It's still a dry, crushable beer, but man, they're strong. 6.3% on the higher end of the ABV range. Can we
get a Fest beer in America? Can the watchers get a Fest beer?
You can. Some breweries will make these as a tribute to them, but it's not a real Fest beer, because the Fest beer is a protected name for the 6 breweries in Munich. They're the only ones licensed to make this beer. It's a golden beer. It all tastes very, very similar. It looks very similar, but of course, just like everybody, they have local fans have their favorites. Mine is Augustiner. I like that one the best. But if I can remember from the top of my head, there's Augustiner, Paulaner, Hacker Shore, Spaten, Lowenbrau, and who am I missing? It's
I wrote down the one that there's the giant 10,000 person tent is Hoffenbrau.
No, Hacker Shore.
Hacker Shore.
Anyway, there's 6 of them, and I think I named five there. But these 6 breweries in Germany They're the only ones licensed to make the fest beer, and they only make it that one time of the year. They do can it, and you can get it exported. So sometimes in some specialty places, I think there's a place in Charlotte where you can go and try that fest beer here. They do export it, but it would be a travesty for an American brewery to claim they're making an actual traditional fest beer. We can only make an imitation of it. It's kind of like champagne. It's a protected appellation.
Well, I think we should make it then. Give the people in the comments something to talk about.
Yeah,
You know?
it's kind of like
The Germans in the comments would kill us.
in Belgium, they have Goose and Lambic. That's protected. In Cologne, Germany, they have the Kolsch. Even though a lot of Americans claim they make Kolsch, that's only can be made in Cologne,
It's
Germany.
like champagne too, right?
Champagne.
Isn't Parmesan like that? You can't call
Right,
it Parmesan
Right.
Reggiano?
A lot of things like that, they protect it. So fest beer is one of them. But Americans, we seem to like, for Oktoberfest, we seem to like this darker, maltier, more rich, full-flavored Marzen style. So Marzen, it comes from it means March beer. So what they would have done historically is make the beer in March and then allow it to lager in caves, through the summer months. And then when harvest time came, they would break this beer out and they'd all enjoy it.
How about that?
So
Let me ask you this. Let me do a stump the chump. When was this? How old is this beer? I don't know. I'm just asking a loaded question.
it goes back to the 1700s, maybe even before that. But I know it was traditionally served at Oktoberfest, and that started in 1810, I believe. And Oktoberfest was a celebration for the king and eventual queen of Bavaria. So it was really their wedding celebration. And that tradition, they had so much fun. They held it in this big meadow, which I think they call it Teresa's Meadow. And I don't speak German, so I'm going to mess this up as well. But the name initially of the festival was Weizen, I think, which means meadow or meadow with the wheat or something like that. And even today, more than 200 years later, they're still having it in the same location. So it's it's really cool if you get to check it out. The festivity is. It's a 1 mile square of just partying, and holy cow, do they have fun, man. There's no water, by the way. So if you go to this thing, the crazy thing about it is if you ask for water, they look at you like you're an alien, right?
What year did you go?
You just get these. I've been a few times.
Okay.
I went 2 years ago with my brother and my dad. It was awesome. And then I went before that by myself when I was speaking with IBM out there at the IoT headquarters in Munich.
Oh, that's right.
But in both times, man, a lot of liters are drank. It's really customary to drink 3 liters. That's what that people will do. But working in this industry, I know better. And you drink some water in between those if you can find it. And they have these really amazing spatchcock ducks. So they take this duck,
that spatchcock.
they cut it right down the middle and grill this thing, and they serve it on a plate, and you get it. They're amazing. It's kind of like reminds me of like a Peking duck and like a fried chicken at the same time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's so good. So if you go there, try that out. And then they have
spatchcock's my go-to. I love that.
They got these crazy amusement rides, like roller coasters out there. They're like take you way high up and spin you around, and it's just the thing you need after you drink 3 liters of this beer. But no, you don't. But they have tons of dancing, singing. Now, for people that have never been to Oktoberfest, you have to get tickets to get a seat in the inside. You have to get tickets to sit at the big tables in there, and you all sit together. If you don't have tickets, you can sit in the perimeter of the tents. Okay, but each of these 6 big breweries have their own tents, and you can go in there if you have tickets. But you have to bring cash. You bring cash, and you go around, and the waiter or waitresses will see you, and you say you want a beer. There's no choices. You only get fest beer. That's it. And you pay maybe 8 to 10 euros for a liter of beer, and then you have a good time. There's singing and dancing, and then games and hats and all kinds of.
So this
stuff.
beer is high in ABV, and there's a giant foot of it. I mean, and you're supposed to drink 3 customary?
Most people drink 3.
So people are getting hammered, huh?
Oh yeah, it's like a gigantic American frat house.
Really?
Call it a German frat house.
How about that? So historically, it's just a celebration.
Yeah, and the big deal is the lederhosen they all wear. They wear lederhosen, and the women wear a dirndl. It's a special skirt they wear, and they all get dressed up for it. And these outfits can cost upwards of $1,000.
Yeah, we just learned this the hard way. As you guys can see behind us, we're decorated for it. We got a very cool, very prominent German brewery down the road. He's a good friend of ours, and they do it in a big way. They've got a great beer garden down there. So we started jumping on board this year, and we're doing it too, so that the vibe is the same on the entire street. For those who don't know where we're at, there's probably 50 million breweries around us. And I'm just kidding, it's like 10. But I know because I agreed to buy the staff costumes. And then when I told you, your jaw dropped, and then we realized, you can't even find them for less than $100. So
Yeah.
it's funny. But I think it added to the party. I thought it was great. I think we need more of these next year. How much? So what's inflation post COVID? What do you think we should charge here? Like $38 a beer?
I think they're 10.
I mean, we live in Charlotte. Real estate's high here. We got it. We
I'm not sure. It's a great question, but yeah. Anyway, so it's Oktoberfest.
So there's no boot in Oktoberfest either? Last question.
I don't remember seeing them. They all serve them in these things. I mean, these things are really thick.
So where'd the boot come from then?
I don't know. It's a stump the master Cicerone question. I don't know. Maybe from the movie. I don't know. But one of the things about the dimples, which is cool, it gives you more grip on the glass. So imagine if it didn't have the dimples, if you see a dimpled mug, it's really for grip.
I actually prefer holding it by the dimples, because for some reason this is, they must have designed this thing in 1800 too. It just doesn't feel good in my hand. I feel like it's like when you're picking a pistol, what do you want the yoke on it to be? I need mine like to be a little bit more here, but it's just not there.
Well, a liter's 32 ounces, so a pint's 16. So you'd have to charge at least the same as you would for 2 pints of beer, because that's what you're getting in one of these. It's basically a double.
Man, I'm gonna end up drinking 3 of these customary on the podcast. But all right,
So what else is on your mind, Eric, today?
I wanted, once again, I'm left behind doing all the work, much like I guess the Oktoberfest story I just heard. It's great living vicariously through Joe. But Joe's getting ready to go do hop harvest. Joe, where are you going?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Hop selection.
So this time of the year, when you drink your harvest beers, they harvest hops. So I think it's around the 50th parallel around the world where hops grow the best. And in the United States, it's the Yakima Valley. So ironically, it wasn't planned this way, but my wife is from Yakima, where all the hops are grown.
When you told me that, I thought you were joking. I'm like, wait a minute, did you convince your wife that she's from Yakima, Washington?
Yeah,
really?
So all my in-laws are out there, and we are blessed to be able to go out once a year. And because the Sugar Creek does enough volume of hops, we can go out to the fields and get to inspect the hops and talk to the growers and talk to the producers and see how they harvest them and dry them. And then what they do is they bring out these big bales, and I think they're like at least 100 pounds. Each bale is around 100 pounds. And then they have this tool where they will stab the bale and take out a core from the center of the bale. Now, once you have the core, the plug, they label that with each lot. So, for instance, we use Citra. That's one of our. That's a very popular hop in the U.S. A lot of people use it, and we use it in some of our beers, and we use a lot of it. And so, when we go up there, a lot of smaller breweries, what happens after the bigger breweries come in and select their lot that they want, the hop grower will blend all the rest of the lots together, and then that's what everybody else gets, which is a blend. But what we get to do is go out and actually inspect each lot. So they'll give us 3 to 6 lots, put it on the table, and then you can rub them, smell them, taste beers made with them, and it really gives you a better idea of what you're going to get with the varietal that you pick. So really fortunate to have hand-selected ones. We come out and do that once a year, and I'm getting ready to go out and do that next week.
Let me ask you a question.
So stay tuned for some video.
And I mean, I know you've asked me to go with you before, but have you ever gone out there and just been completely disappointed with everything?
Well, one of the things I'm wary of this year is I heard there was a lot of wildfires up in Canada.
That's what I'm getting at. Yep.
Yeah, so you have these wildfires, and you can get smoke taint on the hops. So that smoke comes through, gets on the hop leaf. They harvest that, and then that smoke taint ends up in the beer.
And I remember one year we had, well, I think they had some problems getting people, manpower. Our hops were a little bit later in the year, and we got a little bit more of the oniony flavors. So,
Right.
so let me ask you a question. When you end up going out there and making these selections, what's the percentage chance that you've actually made the right decision?
It's hard because rubbing the hops and smelling them and looking at a bright green, beautiful cone, it's different than brewing with it.
Yeah.
So the oils and the different aromatic compounds inside the hops and the bittering agents, the alpha acids, stuff like that, they all respond differently when you boil them and dry hop with them. So, I mean, you can get a really good idea when you get out there and rub them and look at it, but you never really know until you actually brew the beer, right? So
Didn't you go out there one year and tell me that they had an actual brew system out there they brew with?
they do, yeah. These guys,
There's no chance that they can brew with some of these hops immediately to give you an idea of what they could do, or no?
not, it takes to make a good beer. It takes between 14 and 21 days from grain to glass. So a lot of times they don't have time. Excuse me.
So it's that liter of beer is what it is. I'm already burping.
So 14 to 21 days to make a beer. So they do have their own brewery systems, and they do work with a lot of the local brewers, and they oftentimes have some fantastic beers right there at the hop farms for you to try. That's one of the highlights. I love to go and try those, especially the wet hop beers. Now, if anybody doesn't know what a wet hop beer is, that is when they harvest the cones off the vine and they don't dry them. Now they have these cones, they're not dry, so they still have moisture in them, and you brew just like with the cone, the wet cone. So it takes almost 9 to 1 times more cones than wet cones than it does dry to bitter the same amount of beer. So the only way we can get them out here on the East Coast from that is if they overnight them, and the freight is astronomical. So you don't see a lot of wet hop beers here in Charlotte and the East Coast, but if you go to the West Coast during harvest, they're on in every pub because everyone has that chance to make one.
I've had some wet hop, probably with you. It's been 10 years, and I am not the biggest fan of the wet hop beers. Can you tell me the difference between that? So these fly. When we were out there last one, man, the fly got me.
Attacked.
Yeah. So what is the difference in the glass between the wet hop and the normal hop pellet?
I think it's evolving. And real fast before I address that, I want to mention now what they're doing with cryogenic technology is they're freezing these in a way where you can get the wet hop flavor, but they can ship it and it's more, Yakima Chief is doing this, where they can ship it in it'll still give you the wet hop flavor, but it'll last longer. So it's a cryo wet hop. I don't know much about this technology, but that's out there, and that's something I want to check out when I go and look at this. But what does it taste like? To me, it gives you I don't know how do you say it. So if you go out to the hop field, you can get a certain smell. It's a fresh smell, fresh hop smell, and the wet hop, you get that fresh field outdoor kind of aroma in the beer with a real heavy kind of grassy, more of a grassy character to it. So I feel like it's more of an outdoors field-like aroma from the beer itself. And this flavor in the beer is the first to diminish. So you have to harvest them and get them into the beer fast. And then on top of it, you have to drink the beer fast because you're not going to get that flavor for long, 2 to 4 weeks, and then it's gone. It's out of the beer. So it's really the definition of a seasonal beer.
The flavor of grass.
Grassiness.
Yeah. I mean, I could do without that.
But they a lot of times now, because of the engineering of the hops, different oils in there, you can really get some of the beautiful fruity kind of characteristics in the hops.
I think that's the best thing about, and look, we've been roasted by the fellows in England. We even got whacked in Australia on your beer pouring. But I think that's one. Man, you got roasted on your beer pouring. example in podcast, but I think that's what's making American beer so great, man, is that we are pushing the threshold on everything. I mean, everything that we see happening, the technology, just the equipment companies in Charlotte alone that have moved to the different distilled hop oils and things like that. It's just crazy to see the technology advance.
You got to stay on top of it. That means you have to get out there to the fields. You got to meet with your vendors. You got to go to the expos. You got to go to the fairs. You got to talk to other brewers. Just like anything, this stuff moves fast, and you got to stay on top of it if you want to know what's going on. So that's one of the fun parts of my job, and it's also a little bit scary because you got to try new things.
So when you're out there and we see people picking the same hops as us too, I mean, it's probably a good idea to stay in touch with the people that you're harvesting with, that you're selecting with, just in case you're coming up with things that may or may not be up to your standard or our standard, or it might be, So what's the hop? You and I were just talking about it, the Solani hop. You were just messing with this thing, right?
Yeah, we've been a good customer for a long time with Yakima Quality. It's a small vendor up in Yakima Quality Hops. Great people up there. Tim and Lee always treat us very well, and proud to use a lot of their hops and some of their award.
We should get them on the podcast.
I'd love to have them.
That would be great.
Hopefully we get to meet them. But they have a new hop, and I forget what the number was, but they've been working on it for quite some time. It's called Elani, Elani. And I think some people have brewed with it, and we just picked up several hundred pounds and brewed a hazy with it. So we'll see how that comes out. I'm really excited. You can smell it in the whirlpool and then smell it in the fermenter, and then it's just really hard to formulate a good opinion until it's in the glass and packaged and you give it a try. And even a day or two after packaging, it still evolves and changes. So really excited to try that one. So
What's
come to Tap Room and
it
give it a try.
supposed to do for us? Are we grassy, or are we
So here's the thing that's cool about
fruity, mango?
Yeah, here's the thing that's cool about it. It gives you kind of a southern hemisphere tropical feel to the beer. So think like mango and those sort of passion fruit, kind of pineapple-y, kind of tropical flavors into the hop. But what's great about it is it's a high yielding hop, meaning that per acre of harvest, they can get a lot more of the hops out. When they have a high yielding hop like this, it drives the price down. So that's good, right? And in today's competitive market, especially when you're doing a hazy with a whole boatload of hops, you want to be cost conscious. So when you're importing these, Nelson Sauvin from Australia, you're paying upwards of $20 a pound. That's just bonkers. I mean, it's just absolutely bonkers. It's like tens of thousands of dollars in hops for just one batch. Yeah, forget that.
I agree.
So what a great brewer does is they look what's locally available to them. So what's available here in the U.S. that we can get that's awesome to give us a sort of flavor, and you have to try new things out. So we gave this one a try. We'll see what happens.
That's a great point for other breweries out there, home brewers. I'll never forget probably CBC in 2015 or 16. I was in one of the hop classes, and the guy was up on stage basically preaching to the entire crowd, hey guys, look, we're all fighting over the same new cool hop. And the truth is, by the time you get your batch of that hop, it's crap. When all these other great hops with all this great information and all these studies already done on them are sitting there rotting away. And some of the times, if not most of the times, there's more information on that hop out there to help you manipulate it better. And it's a better quality hop.
Yeah.
The problem is that it's not the new shiny thing, right?
Well, we use Cascade. That's like the mother of all the hops.
Yep.
So meaning they have daughter hops, a lot of different ones that come off of that one that a lot of brewers use, but the real OG, so to speak, is Cascade. I mean, that's the quintessential Sierra Nevada Pale Ale Cascade hop. We use that one a lot here at Sugar Creek, and we hand select it, and man, is it nice out there. It's really nice hop. It's good. It's got bright green colors, big cones, really good aroma. And one of the things I'm looking for when I go out there that you mentioned is I'm trying to avoid any kind of smoke taint, like I mentioned, any kind of diesel aromas that might come from the equipment that they use to harvest. You don't want diesel on that, so you look at that. That's a sign of poor quality. Yellowing of the cone. Some varieties like Amarillo, that literally means yellow, are late harvested, and that's normal for them to be a little bit yellow. But once they start yellowing, you can get flavors of onion, of garlic, and those they don't come through good into the beer. But a lot of times, some customers can pick that up as like a funyun or onion kind of.
That's how I get scallion, things like that. I mean, it drives me. Oh,
Yeah, but other people, like I know Stone in particular, Stone Brewing, they look for a little bit of that because when you blend that with other hops, you can get what they call dank aromas, and that gives you the kind of simulation of a cannabis-like aroma. So, I mean, the hop vine and the cannabis flower, I mentioned this before in the podcast, they're in the same genus. So those plants are very similar. They have a lot of the same oils.
you know, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I guess we could just look at it, but what hops perform the best in the beers that sell the most? Is it the danky beers? Is it the more tropical fruit forward hoppy beers? You know, I wonder what performs best. I guess what would pernicious, not to plug them, I mean, it is what it is with them, but what's pernicious more?
I don't know what the hops are in that one, but I do know that that's a Budweiser product. And I know Budweiser uses mostly extracts in all of their, so they're not even using real hops. They're using a CO2 extract. So CO2 extract is where they take the plants and they get all the oils and all the resin out of the cone, and now you just have the essence of the hop, and they use that in the it's a very heavily processed product. So we don't use those here. We just use the actual flour.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I was just at a football game with one of our wholesalers and a few of the other suppliers who are friends but competitors, and we were all drinking our pumpkin beer. And one of the presidents or CEOs of the other supplier, we're all drinking. And he starts laughing. He's like, "Hey, this is really good pumpkin beer, Eric. How much pumpkin are you putting in it?" And I'm like, "Ah, man, probably 600-700 pounds." He's like, "What?" And then the wholesaler looked at me like I didn't know what I was talking about. And he's looking at me and he goes, "You actually put pumpkin in this?" I said, "Yeah, what do you mean?" He goes, I was like, "Oh, okay, I forget. You know, you're on the verge of micro and macro." And he was completely blown away. But the thing was, everybody was drinking it. They loved it.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show, you know. So can I ask you one question? How are they getting all that resin out of that flour? You know that?
Yeah, I mean they use liquid CO2 and in a big giant plant. So if you see all the people that vape these days, where they have tobacco vapes or cannabis, it's legal in 13 states. They're using you get the ones that are very high in THC, stuff like that. Those extracts, those resins, those gels that come out of it are all made in these CO2 supercritical plants. How that works, I'm not 100%, but they push that through, and that's able to separate the plant material from the oils and the resins, and then they separate the two, and then you get that. It's supposed to be very pure, but anytime you process something, you're getting away from the actual plant, right? It's not that it's just like food. The more you process it, the less it's like the original thing, right? So we want to keep our thumb on what is original, the real plant, get that in there, right? So our beer is just hops, barley or wheat or cereal grain, okay, water and yeast. That's it. And then if we're going to add spices and stuff, we add those spices. So back to the pumpkin beer. What's interesting about that is that pumpkin, a lot of the flavors of fall that people know, it's really not from the pumpkin, it's from the spices that go into that. So think about pumpkin pie spice. That's what gives you that flavor of fall. But we do add a lot of pumpkin to the beer, right? And it gives you a touch behind the spice flavor is that vegetable flavor. And that's really what you get from pumpkin. If you try just the meat of a pumpkin, you'll find it's not super flavorful. And it's a lot of water.
So just to give them a little backstory, Joe was coming in my office with little jars with our head brewers, and it looked beautiful. It looked like I was getting ready to take a scoop of pumpkin pie. And at first I was all about it. And then you realize it's just emaciated, is that the right word? Of just pulverized pumpkin meat. And that's exactly what it tastes like.
Yeah, just the meat of the pumpkin. So
It's
we
not great.
we bring that in from Florida. They grow the pumpkins down in Florida. We bring in it just the meat, and we add the meat to the mash, and then that's how you make the pumpkin.
What was funny was, and I know it hurt us and helped us too, but you know me, I love telling a good story. So once I rocked him back on his heels because he was, setting me up in front of the wholesaler, and I'm like, "What are you talking about, boy? We use real pumpkin." I talked about, remember, what was it, last year or 2 years ago, our pumpkin meat order was behind, and Harris Teeter is one of 5 grocery stores in the Carolinas. So
And that's our biggest customer.
our biggest customer, followed behind Publix and Food Line and everybody else, just in case those guys are listening. But we actually didn't get the pumpkin in on time. We were going to miss our deadline, so we basically bought all of the small cans in the area and from Harris Teeter, and I was telling them this story, and they were like, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "Yeah, we thought we were doing a great job. We bought all the pumpkin from our customer," and then we ended up pissing them off because they had no small pumpkin cans in any of the grocery stores in the area for all of the people wanting to make pumpkin pies.
That was like 70, if I remember correctly, 70 cases of pumpkin.
So that's what I was telling the wholesaler. I was, "Hey, real sorry that pumpkin beer was expensive that year because we paid people to open individual cans and dump them into a big vat." Remember that? I remember having that picture.
So Eric, we're talking about this pumpkin beer. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about our pumpkin festival mascot?
Well, we use a mixture of artists, AI, and a couple other things to come up with our art, and we ended up coming up, and we showed that can. We ended up coming up with this outrageous looking pumpkin. And correct me if I'm wrong, our pumpkin beer started out as a base Marzen beer, right?
Yes.
For the most part.
Yes.
So in the beginning, we started playing with a half German style, half pumpkin beer label. And then I remembered a lot of people just absolutely hating it, which in turn morphed into, I love getting kicked in the groin when I design something. It's cool now. Half the time I leave my office going, "Man, people are really going to hate this one." But anyway, we, instead of merging the labels and doing this and that, we ended up coming up with a character that was German pumpkin beer themed. So that's the idea.
Do you have a name for this mascot?
No, we bounced around. I can dig in my phone. We
This is the pumpkin blaster girl.
this is the pumpkin blaster girl. Yeah, and
What's up with the costume? And can you show our viewers?
I mean, I'm not wearing a dress or anything. But I'll say this.
You can at least show the centerpiece.
I'll say this. Our marketing company, we were all the people involved in marketing. We started coming up with all these names and this and that. And then I'll say this just because it needs to be said. One of our people said, "Hey, what if our pumpkin blaster girl were to marry the pumpkin?" And I'm going, "What?" And then I realized Southern Tier's pumpkin guy is like this scary scarecrow. Is that what he is? I don't drink a lot of pumpkin beer. I do now. But is he supposed to be a pumpkin, like a scarecrow?
I don't know.
So that's kind of where it went to. So
Can you get the hat? The pumpkin hat?
you want me to wear the hat?
Yeah, you got to do it.
You gonna film me walking off and walking on, or is it just gonna go snap? I'm in the.
I don't know. We'll have to leave that up to the producer.
A few minutes later.
That's amazing, man. That's unbelievable. Can you see through that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
I feel like I'm in Disney World, to be honest with you. You know, it's like when your kids go take a picture of Winnie the Pooh or something, but you end up seeing out of the mouth and everything else. But
I mean, that's a top-notch piece of work.
yeah, I mean, we're not talking about pumpkin beer, but you know, I think it did well. It did well. When the second part of this is obviously the female. What's the dress? The German dress?
The dirndl.
The dirndl. So if I was wearing a dirndl right now, you guys would have nightmares. But
Hey, it's equal opportunity days. Nobody's going to judge you.
now snap and I'm back to normal.
2 hours later.
So I came in last week and I saw you playing a video game. And I know you don't like video games. So can you explain to me what you were doing playing a video
Sure.
game?
No, it was more of a simulator. It was a brewing simulator.
Okay.
So we won't call it a video game. It's more of a, hey, I really love brewing beer. I don't have all the stuff to do it like you do, Joe. So I'm gonna go in my virtual world and kind of do my best to experience what it's like to make a beer. So it was pretty cool. We tried out this new game called Brewmasters, and I gave it a quick run through. And check it out, man. We'll put a link in the comments or whatever, and you can check out my review of the simulator.
Let me ask you this: if so, say you live in an apartment in New York City, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, or say that you brewed at a young age and then started having kids, and now your garage is full of Fisher Price toys and Power Wheels like mine with two boys, soccer goals, and you just don't have the room for the brew magic anymore, right? Is this a good tool to keep yourself sharp and in tune with making beer or no?
I think it's very good for the beginners, people that are wanting to experience it and get an idea. And you can, nowadays we have the whole virtual world that you can go and jump in. So it's a little different than our generation, I think, Eric. But the next one coming up is, really into this kind of stuff. So I just wanted to give it a quick review and let people know how it pans out versus what things look like in real life. So yeah, check it out.
And look, I'm sure it's nowhere near the real thing, but let's say I never brewed a beer in my life and I learned how to brew on that. Would I have a good idea of what would be expected of me when I went to the physical?
For sure. You get really close.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So basically, it's the same thing as making beer without the hard work and then drinking it.
100%.
Is there like a little video game Master Cicerone that judges your beer at the end? Does it give you a score or no?
It gives you a score.
It does?
Yeah, it gives you a score. And I don't remember what the score. Well, I watched. So I did a reaction to somebody else's review. So I didn't get to actually interact with the game and play it, but it was more of a putting, an experienced eye on top of the developer's eye to kind of give it an idea what it looks like from that perspective.
And what was the name? Do you remember the name of the game?
It's called Brewmasters.
Oh, it's called Brewmasters.
Yeah, Brewmasters. But
okay. And
so what else is on your mind, Eric?
It's that time of year, Joe, and anybody in the beer business would know we are in the third quarter of 2023, which means that everybody wants to know right now what we're doing to a T on the dot in 2024.
Yeah, you have to be in front of this, right?
Yeah.
So when you go to the grocery store and you see all the stuff they have on the shelf, you got to realize that it didn't just magically appear there. It was months of planning and progress.
So, and this as well as I do. I'm just thinking about 2024. What's going to happen? Are consumers going to be price conscious? Are they not? Do labels need to be revamped? Do you have products that you think are awesome that we should try to bring to market? The tap room is a great example of, testing our product on people. So, you go back and you talk to your tap room staff, hey, what did good, what didn't? But, that always doesn't work because when when you get involved, not saying anything negative, sometimes beers are commercially a problem to manufacture on a big level, right? Like our High Creek, for example.
Yeah.
You said that beer is so heavy on the brew house to produce. Why is that again?
Oh, so
It's that liter of beer that we're supposed to do 2 more of these.
yeah, so the issue with this making sour beers is that when you introduce a bacteria that or a yeast that produces the sour flavor that the consumer likes, you run the risk of contaminating your other beers, which are so-called clean, made with a different sort of more traditional yeast that don't have those sour flavors. You don't want all of your beers tasting sour. So in order to do that, we boil the beer after it's been soured in the brew house, and so it takes an extra boil. So we do like an initial boil where we sanitize it, then we ferment it with the acidic culture, and then we bring it back to the brew house again and boil it to kill that off, so that we can make sure we have a sanitary processing environment in the cellar, right? So it takes an extra step and an extra bit of work to kind of give you the idea, the peace of mind that you're not going to contaminate anything else in your brew house with something that produces an acidic sort of flavor, right? Now we use a very clean strain of lactobacillus, which gives us a nice, beautiful, fruity tartness to the wheat-based beer. Now, once we have this beautiful tart wheat-based beer, then to give it some bright fruit flavor and fruit character, we'll blend in some fruit after it's finished fermenting. Once it's finished fermenting, we blend the fruit in. Now we have the addition of more fermentables into the beer. So the challenge with that is, how do you mass produce that, put it out to all over the state, North and South Carolina, in a stable product? The way some breweries do it is they'll add sulfites to the cans. Now that's a chemical preservative. I hate doing that sort of thing, because now you're adding preservatives to the beer, and I want it to be as close to natural as possible.
Does the sulfur come back later?
You can smell it a little bit sometimes.
A little bit of eggs?
Well, not necessarily. The eggy is like a hydrogen sulfide. The sulfur, other sulfurs are like sulfur dioxide. It's more close to the sulfur dioxide aroma, in my opinion.
Is that like
a little bit
match strike?
Yeah, kind of like
Okay.
a struck match.
Struck match.
But you can get that aroma from it. But in order to avoid that, what we do is we'll package the product and then put it through a tunnel pasteurizer and then heat it up and make sure that there's no more viable yeast in there, so that the bright fruit characteristics can stay, and there hasn't been the addition of any sulfites or chemical preservatives. So that's why I say it's very labor intensive to put this kind of product out on a mass scale. So fermented with lactobacillus, back sweetened and brightened with fresh fruit. And then once you have that fresh fruit in the can, then it's pasteurized and sent out all over North and South Carolina. You can buy it on the website too if you want to try it.
So that's one beer, one problem, and we have multiple all over the Carolinas and over 2,000 grocery stores. So when you ask me, what's new, that's it. It's like, all right, we've got this, and this. Is this going to work out? Is this going to put us out of business? Is this going to help us? Is this going to, what
It's
helps,
a risk. It's
what
always
helps,
a risk.
What helps the brew house team? What helps the sales team? What helps this team? What helps that team? Is always what I'm slamming my head against the desk about,
Yeah, I mean, anytime you put out a new product, it's months or years in the making, where you've spent all of this time developing it, working to get the things ready, getting the marketing right, getting it in the can, pitching it to your wholesalers, getting it on the shelf, and then, it's just, you're putting your heart and soul out there, and then you just can get ruthlessly destroyed by the customer. Oh, I don't like this. This is garbage. These people should quit their jobs. It's like,
sometimes
people are merciless.
and it is what it is. And then sometimes you've got a great product, but you're in a sea of products. So what's your marketing campaign? What's the schedule of events? How are you supporting it? The times have changed so much just since you and I have been in. It's there's great beer growing on every tree in every neighborhood now.
Yeah,
you know, and it
it's
used
a
to not be
blessing and a
like that.
curse, right? So it's more competitive, so everybody has to raise the bar, and it's good for the consumer. It's good for craft beer, but at the same time, you know, you can't make mediocre stuff, or nobody's going to come. You'll be out of business real fast. So the fact that we're around for damn near 10 years now, it's a testimony to the team that we have and a lot of hard work and effort that everybody's put into it. And so
We've kept a lot of the same team too, which is great, and it helps. You know, it does. It helps when you know. By the way, you know, we can slowly wind it down, but usually you ask me a war story.
Oh yeah,
or
let's.
something. You know, but I don't know. Maybe we don't.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh no, you got one. I know you've been thinking of it, man. I think we ought to.
I got a couple, but let me ask you this. You know, uh, you just left for 2.5 weeks and did some kind of top secret training. I mean, are you allowed to talk about what you did in 2.5 weeks? Because to me and the brewers and everybody else, we feel like you were on vacation. What were you really doing?
Yeah, no. Oh yeah, so I'm a 21-year reservist and veteran.
But you've
In the
also
Navy.
been overseas.
Yeah, sure, in the Navy, and I drill once a month, and usually 2 days a month. We go and train in the Navy, and then we do two weeks a year, or sometimes more, upwards of 29 days of active duty a year. And my job is we support Second Fleet, and Second Fleet, they guard the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, and the threat that we're worried about always now is the fact that we have an aggressive Russia. So the Second Fleet exists to kind of protect the East Coast from that threat and their, you know, nuclear and submarine capabilities, things like that. And what I did on the 2 weeks is I work for headquarters because I've been in a long time. So we go and I'm an officer, and I work with other officers. And what we do is we simulate what things would look like in a wartime scenario and what our response would look like. So the specifics of that I can't talk about, but we simulate that, and we train on those things, and we present plans and plans of attack to the senior guys, to the top admirals and stuff like that, and how we would respond and how we would use our assets and where we would go and where we'd position. So all of our work is behind closed doors. There's no cell phones allowed, no smart watches allowed, no regular internet allowed, and the shifts are really long. So from like 1 a.m. until 1 p.m. was my shift the next day. So 12-hour day with a 30-minute turnover on both sides, and then your commute to work. It can make for a real long day, but it's fun stuff. It's fun to work with other smart, bright people and kind of get a view of what goes on behind the scenes to keep Americans safe and our way of life you know, protected, I guess you could say. So now with that said, that's
One
what
question.
I do. It's just training. Yeah, go ahead.
Even though it's training.
Yeah.
Did we win the simulation?
Oh yeah, come on now. We always win.
Because that's important.
You got to train to win, right? You got to prepare for the worst, plan to win, though, right?
Well, it sucks if you lose the simulation, you know.
Yeah, no, we can't have that happen.
I mean,
that wouldn't be.
I was going to blame you, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So go back to your time here. Can you give us a view from the front?
You know, you started dropping these on me cold turkey, and I started laughing about it because, you know, like I told you, my grandmother was always in the pictures. It's hilarious that I married into a family of photographers too, and she got me that camera, and I wore an extra magazine pouch, and I took pictures the whole time. So I started going through some of the Facebook pictures that I put on Facebook because I owed those pictures to the other guys in my squads, and as soon as I posted those pictures, I shared those guys to them. What was funny is right before our staff outing, like 3 weeks ago, I saw this video get posted on this chain I have with a lot of my old Marine buddies that were in the infantry with me. Some of them are demolitions experts, some of them are machine gunners, some of them are mortarmen. We still crack on each other. And it was a fucking short of me. Excuse my language. See, I start talking about the military. It was a short of me, and I'm going, oh no. And then all of a sudden, everybody started talking about it again. The next thing you know, I started. So I was going through these pictures, and I was chatting with these guys, and surprisingly, I was worried. Like, you know, these guys were a part of my life for several years, and we did a lot of crazy stuff together. So when you tell stories, now that I'm older, I realize it's not just my story; it's their story too. Mm-hmm. You know, but I also realized too that people's memories are different, so they don't all share the same
Listen,
perspective.
You can't let the facts get in the way of a great story, right, guys?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, when I was going through some of the pictures, one of the things that stuck out to me right after we get to Afghanistan, 9/11 happens, you know, you sign up, you go through training. We were a special operations company, so we went through extra training. And then we finally get over there. We get to Kandahar, everything goes down. Then they push us north. And then for 8 months, we didn't leave. We didn't leave. We just walked around everywhere. We were making maps. We were recovering Stinger missiles. We were fighting the Taliban.
Based out of Kandahar?
We were, but I mean, we pushed so far north. I think I said this before. Our interpreters didn't even work. I mean, we were getting interpreters blasted. I mean, Colonel Khan, to some people they hate, but to me he was a legend. He was an actual Afghani that fled when the Russians tried to take over, went to like Baptist Business School up north, and then he was put in charge of our command personally because he had a recollection or a lay of the land. But I'll never forget, we started going through some of these places, and we go through this one village, and I kid you not, we get all the way to the back, and there's a house in the back, and we go through it. The guy's real nice, but you can tell he's got the evil eyes, man. The eyes always tell you something about somebody, right? And we're sitting there, and everything seems cool. Me and my 3-man fire team plus me, 4 altogether. We get to the back, and it became one of those things where you check the hills behind because they hide stuff. Nothing. I remember turning around and just sitting down. Back then, I smoked a cigarette. I mean, I smoked and dipped back then. Because you just love killing yourself in a combat territory, you know, terrorist environment. It's like the more things that kill me, the better, right? You know, sleep with your blade out of the sheath kind of stuff. But I remember looking back, and there was like a detached building on this guy's house, and everything was made out of mud. And I remember looking at it funny, and something in my head was just like, did we check that building? Because that's much bigger than I thought, you know. And we're all sitting there smoking cigarettes on this rock, and I grab probably Summersheim or one of the other guys. Summersheim's a great guy. He's in Cincinnati. He was a machine gunner. He's my guy. We go back in there. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was Levy. I have no idea. And we go back in this room, and when you walk in the room just didn't seem right. There was something wrong with the room. Right. So then I walk back out, I'm looking from the outside, and I'm going, something's not right. This building looks huge, but when you walk in the inside, the room is smaller than it should be. So then I go back outside, and I pace off on the inside, and I pace off on the outside. And then I go in there, I look some more, and they've got these blankets hanging up on the walls and these pictures. And then I'm like, man, something's up. So I find the seam in the wall where they both come together. And they're different shades. And I realized, man, this is a mock wall. And I knew that because the mud that they used was still wet. And long story short, as soon as I started finding that area, the individuals were pretty fidgety. But then that's when things get serious, and, you know, so we pull them out, do things. And then, you know, I come in there with the other crew, and we just start hacking away at this wall. And I think probably 15 minutes later, we realized we found a ginormous cache of weapons. But this was probably between end of 02 and beginning of 03. We sat there, and it was funny because when I shared this with some of the guys, it's like, hey, you guys remember this? My lieutenant, who's still in, and our first sergeant, who was the commandant of, like, not the Marine Corps, but he was the commander. He was the first sergeant or sergeant major of Okinawa, the 3rd Marine Division, I think it is. I'm a little rusty. But long story short, they all helped me remember. We were there for 2 days. It took an entire day to unpack all those weapons. We found tank mines this big. We found Russian ammunitions. We found probably 115 boxes of AKs. This was in an arsenal. And at the time, it was the largest weapons cache ever found in Afghanistan.
That's unbelievable. It's awesome.
So
Thanks for sharing that.
They let me smoke a cigarette. They let me hang out, and then literally they came over to me with the detonator, and they said, "Eric, when we say go, you blow this thing."
Oh, you guys blew it up?
Oh yeah, because that's what we did. That was all. That was our job because we were backpacking everywhere. We would use 5 tons. We would use motor T guys to get us around. And I mean, it took us.
Do you go inspect it after you blow it up?
Yeah. Well, the EOD guys do. So what we did was we unpacked everything, and that was the worst part, right? Like you just want to stay alive, and here you are. And I mean, look, it's Afghanistan. You know, it's a third world country. It's the closest thing to living like the Bible that there is. And these people are storing things. It's like storing your steak or chicken on the counter. You're like, I'm gonna die if I eat this, right? So as we're uncovering all this stuff, we're also realizing, oh, these tank mines are probably from the 70s, but they're huge. They look like giant mushrooms. So here you are as a Marine, a young kid, you're holding this thing, like shaking as you bring it out. And then once you get it all out there and laid out, and they take pictures, inspect it, mortar rounds from back in the day, we got to take it all out in the middle of the desert, blow it up. So I got an award for that one. That's one of the ones that you always joke about. Not joke about, but
That's awesome.
when Joe and I became business partners, Joe's got a lot of awards in Merchant Marine Academy and this and that. My wife for Christmas framed all of my awards, which she thought was a good idea, but there were so many of them. I felt embarrassed to hang them, and I told you that. But then I realized I was going to have a pissed off wife at home if I didn't. So in the end, that's
No, it's awesome. You should be proud of it, man. That was awesome.
well, you know, you are, but at the same time, it's like, are you telling old high school football and stories the rest of your
Hey,
life?
man, that's part of you these days. So
But yeah, that was a cool one, and it was one of the. Here's the thing, though, and it's the last thing I'll say. It took us so long to unpack it, and then stack it and blow it. This place actually happened to be on this area that was a valley, and there was actually a really nice creek running through this place. So we got probably 36 hours of downtime. And I'll never forget, man, I got to take off all my clothes and swim in this creek. It was probably about 30 meters wide. And I mean, we got 24 hours break because we got a good pat on the back. And in the end, I mean, shit, I can't even imagine how much C4 we used to blow that one, but it was pretty cool. But I imagine I don't have the record anymore for all you young blood, leathernecks, Army guys, whatever you guys are. But for a split second, I was the record because we were some of the first ones pushing up there. But
thanks everybody for listening today. It's been great as usual. Stay tuned. We're going to have some guests on the future podcast coming up.
Joe's going to tell us how Hop Harvest went because I won't be there.
Yep. I'll do that. I'll send some videos, and hopefully we can feather in some photos from that experience you had there in Afghanistan for our guests to see it. But thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next time.